Welcome to Spotlight ETSU. I'm your host, Carrie Oliveira. On today's program, we turn our focus to nursing and a special journey to India. Our guests today are Dr. Helene Holbrook of the College of Nursing and Rebecca Howard, a student in microbiology. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
So you all went to India.
We sure did.
Yeah. When did this happen?
This was late June through mid-July of this summer.
Well, we're going to talk about how hot it must have been in India at that time of the year. But you all went for the Himalayan Health Exchange. And so we're going to talk today about what all that is and how you had this opportunity to go to India to participate in that program. But first, you're going to tell me about yourselves. So how is it, Dr. Holbrook, that you ended up at ETSU? How long have you been here?
I've been here 3 years. I came from San Francisco after living there since the mid-'70s, after my daughter abandoned me to go to Warren Wilson College outside of Asheville.
How terrible of her.
And so I started coming back and went back to school and got some teaching credentials and decided that checking in with her in Asheville, periodically coming over here because there was some similar research I was doing and pursuing. Finally, they just offered me a job.
No, that's auspicious.
Finished school, sold a home in Oakland, and bought a farm in Southwest Virginia, and have 20 acres, 2 horses, 2 dogs, 2 cats.
That's a very different life than you had to have been living north of San Francisco.
It was, and it was in my mind's eye for some time as to what I was hoping to eventually end up at.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
so a confluence of wonderfulness in your life all of a sudden.
Chronically.
That is fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. And Rebecca?
I am a junior at ETSU, so I was offered a scholarship for the Honors College 3 years ago and couldn't turn that down. So that's why I'm here.
They're going to pay you tuition.
Right. Exactly. But I'm so glad, I took that. I think ETSU is, exactly where I needed to be.
And what exactly is microbiology?
So it's the study of
Microbes.
microorganisms, yeah.
And this is, what do you want to do when you grow up?
I'm a pre-med student, so med school's next. Dermatology is the ultimate goal.
Because there are lots of microorganisms on my face.
That's true.
No, that really is,
Yeah,
and that's
all
horrible.
over you.
So you all, though, sort of took a little break from your normal course of doing business and teaching graduate students in the nursing program and studying microbiology, and you all went for about 3.5 weeks to India as participants in the Himalayan Health Exchange.
Correct.
So tell me about that program.
The Himalayan Health Exchange is a program that's been around for several years, probably close to 20 years. And it's organized around trying to promote health and wellness and prevention in Indian populations, typically in underserved, distant, remote, and rural villages.
Which I imagine there are quite a few of.
Yes, and our focus on our trip was in the northeast section of India, and we flew from Atlanta to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to New Delhi. New Delhi, we took a train, and each one of these legs took about 8 to 10 hours each. And when we got out of New Delhi into our first destination, we got met by our car caravan. And there were 10 vehicles.
I think there were 8.
8 vehicles.
So like 8 vehicles traveling in a caravan everywhere you went.
Yes.
For like 6 or 8 or 10 hours at a time.
Right.
Depending upon the destination.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus our kitchen truck. Since we can't eat the local foods and had to have, we couldn't drink the local water either. All of our produce and everything went with us in a truck. We had a kitchen crew that went too that knew how to prepare our meals so that we could eat it safely. So
how is this trip funded? It sounds like an enormous amount of resources that goes into it. How many people went on this trip?
37.
37. Were they all from ETSU, or were you with a group of other people connected to other places?
The ETSU group was 11.
11.
And we joined undergraduate students from around the country, medical students from around the country, a few physicians, also one medical student from Ireland, and a museum curator from Australia.
And a museum curator. We're going to come back to the museum curator that I imagine has to do with the anthropology sort of thing. We're going to come back to that. So there's 37 of you in a caravan of like 8 cars with a kitchen truck just traveling for hours and hours and hours at a time.
Right.
And so, I mean, really though, how does this get paid for?
I hope to have it paid off in probably another year or 2.
Oh my goodness.
So I don't get any subsidy for this.
Nothing.
But I had a little money, and I spent a year, about 5 years ago, in a Yupik Eskimo fishing village in Bush, Alaska. And so I have come to believe that it's really important for those of us in practice as a nurse practitioner and as a professor to sort of keep the global perspective. And so the cultural immersion is an integral underpinning to practice. And so it had been about 5 years since I had been away, and I had this little bit of money saved and thought, okay, it's time.
I'm going to use this for this objective.
Exactly.
So you all were going, and so you're trying to learn about and bring access to medicine and medical care, learn about medical care to rural, remote areas in India, specifically the Himalayan area.
Right.
But also, it was an anthropological trip, so a medical anthropology sort of adventure for all of you. And so anthropology then is the study of human culture.
Right.
Right. And so then a medical anthropology trip would be a study of human culture through the lens of medicine. And so what kinds of things were you learning about from an anthropological perspective?
Strictly anthropologically, we studied the religion there. So we stayed at a few monastic guest houses, so we got to even speak one-on-one with some of the monks to talk about their lifestyle.
Buddhist monks.
Yes, Buddhist monks. So one of our professors that went with us is an expert on religion, and so we had those lectures. But then specifically medical anthropology, the medical students were each assigned a lecture, and so we would learn about something, a condition that was specific to the Himalayas, like maybe, or not that it only occurs in the Himalayas,
but it happens frequently?
Yeah, it's a problem there, like tuberculosis or pterygiums and pingueculums, things like that.
Pterygiums and pingueculums?
They're eye conditions from the heavy UV exposure from the high elevation.
I had no idea that was I didn't know those words existed, but that your geography would impact.
Absolutely.
I mean, absolutely it would, as I think about it, which I never have thought about before, but your geography, where you are located to like dangers and whatnot, would promote certain sorts of things.
Right.
How do we handle like chronic eye problems because of elevation?
Well, the best thing that you can do for them there is just provide preventative treatment. So sunglasses is the best thing. If you wear your sunglasses, then you don't have UV exposure and you're not going to get these conditions that would cause you. Yes, it's easy as that. Also, we could provide lubricating eye drops.
We each brought donated eyeglasses, sunglasses. So we each had to make room in our suitcases
to bring that
for
over.
50 or 100 pairs of sunglasses, and we distributed them all.
Oh. That's fabulous. That's wonderful.
I'm not sure if one of the pictures might be of some Buddhist nuns trying on their sunglasses for the first time.
Definitely. We'll take a look at the pictures, but that would be awesome. I went to Catholic school, and so the idea of Catholic nuns in sunglasses is delightful enough, but definitely Buddhist nuns in sunglasses tickles me. So, but before we started shooting, one of the things that you all were talking about is sort of the various practitioners of medicine in Indian culture. So not only do you have like the traditional physicians, or I'm sorry, for them it wouldn't be traditional, in Western mind, traditional physicians, but then you have herbalists and shaman, and all of them contribute differently to the provision of medical care. And so how does that impact the sort of general provision of medical care in general in India? I mean, it figures to me, this is just me thinking, that if you have multiple entities providing medical care, that you would get more access, and that you would have greater opportunity to have your medical conditions treated, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, part of the difficulty, we were in a small, and I must admit that I'm more acquainted with this one province in the northeast portion of India, which is Himalayan Pradesh. And so
Himachal Pradesh.
All right. So, and
Sorry
that,
to correct you.
I know. And so that vicinity was up on the Chinese border.
Okay.
It was adjacent to the areas where the country of Tibet had originally been. And so it was heavily influenced by the Tibetan refugees. And so there was that religion, that cultural influence in that particular territory would be reflective in the medical anthropologic background of things. So the herbalists and Tibetan medicine are very influenced in that area. And one of the things that the Himalayan Health Exchange was doing in one of the schools that they supported was subsidizing and cultivating common Tibetan herbs. So there was a better standardization of what was coming through. The distribution would be to the local herbalists so that they would have a mail order set up, and a distribution center that was actually in the area that they were servicing. So rather than importing it from China or other countries that may not have the same kind of either political or advantages to sort of fostering a local community, there was better quality control, there was more ownership of the herbal products, and it was ultimately supporting one of the Buddhist monastery schools.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, so that was an arm of the Himalayan Health Exchange. They also support this medical anthropology kind of arm of things. Mm-hmm. And I tell this story where myself as a nurse practitioner, the pediatrician and the internist were with 7 medical students. And the pediatrician was saying, when we see the kids, I really want to be sure that you're emphasizing how much that they should be drinking 2 glasses of milk a day and 4 glasses of water a day, and the common things. And I turned to her and I went, I haven't seen a cow anywhere. There were yaks back there, but yaks resemble bison.
I was going to say like big and hairy.
And I don't know about approaching something like that.
I'm surely not going to milk it. No.
So the pediatrician looked at me and she goes, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to go get the medical anthropology students to help us, and they'll do a survey, and they'll go down and check and see what the community is taking in for nutrition. Where do they get their substances?
Wait a minute. So what you're telling me is that we had a pediatrician asking you to make recommendations, make sure you little children are doing these things without any sort of knowledge or appreciation as to whether that was feasible?
Well, the thing is, when you come out of our Western medicine mind,
yes,
and you think about the advantages that we enjoy, you assume that everybody else has probably got some access to some advantages. And we had just arrived. We were now at 13,000 feet, and some of the broad approach, when you've got 100 patients lined up outside of your makeshift clinic with 7 students, you're sort of going, all right, this is what I tell all my students, So all of a sudden, we all had to put the skids on and say, wait a minute, all right. We got to figure out what advantages, because what we had learned very early on in the trip was that what we considered the norm was not the norm there.
No.
And there was never a complaint of all these students. There was no electricity. There was no running water. There was no hot water. There was no cell phone coverage.
No, there sure wasn't. I mean, you don't have running water. You surely do not have 3G.
So there was a lot of storytelling and shared experiences. Oh. And so the ability to start to create a community started very early on because of all of the opportunities to do that. But to get back, it's not that we assume too much.
Right.
There was a learning curve we all had to do, because this is not a culture that's got a lot of written knowledge about it. It's not in a textbook. There's not something on the internet.
Medical knowledge, you mean, is not codified or anything. Okay.
And the effect of what we were walking into was a learning experience, and it was presented as such, whether it was about the Eastern religion or it was about the effect of tourism on the Himalayas, the effect of global warming. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can, the whole opportunity of every trip brought us an enlightened appreciation of what it was going to be like there in another 5 years or 10 years or 20 years.
And I think, and specifically you all going sort of with the expectation of learning about medicine and healthcare, all of those things, it doesn't occur to me, like in the United States even, that, your economy and agriculture and whatever else religion play into access to medical care, your perception of medicine and whatnot. And so that's fascinating that you were able to see that like firsthand. Mm-hmm. Wow. This had to be a mind-blowing experience, was it not?
It was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of trip.
Man, that's cool. We have some photographs from your trip that they've been sort of like scrolling out of the corner of my eye. So what I want to do is sort of have you all talk to me about some of the things that we're looking at here. So what do we have here? We have a village.
It's
Yes.
actually a town.
That's a
wouldn't you
town.
say?
That's
Yes,
a
Is that
city.
Manali?
It's like a city.
This is Manali. It's actually one of the really popular tourist places. It's almost like the Gatlinburg of Himachal Pradesh. So
Himachal Pradesh.
that's the state we were in
Okay.
Northeast India. We stayed in there pretty much the whole time, just traveling around to different villages in that state.
Okay.
So this is a major tourist town. It's also a ski town, and so this is where we got to do a lot of our shopping. It's just store after
So
store.
definitely
of-
more access to resource in general here than the places
Yes,
that you
this
were
was
working.
this was towards the end of our trip. We've already finished all of our clinics, and this is sort of our vacation time, and,
Right.
and like getting to purchase things that reminded us of the trip and things like
Right.
that. So we were just walking around, and interacting with the people and doing some shopping.
So this is at about 8,000 feet. And I thought that I was.
Did you just drive up the mountain? Is that how you guys got up?
No,
Or did you have to be,
actually,
like,
at this
airlifted?
point, we
You were coming down at this point.
Right.
And I was like a mountain goat. After being at 13,000 feet for the previous 2 weeks, I get down to 8,000 and go, oh my,
There's so much oxygen and
I
it's
know.
flat.
and
That's funny.
You walk.
What else do we have here?
You were never quite sure where to put your eyes because there weren't any public restrooms.
Oh,
And so people would
just wherever.
go in, a trough, and you would just sort of have to realize that you needed to look elsewhere. So,
Oh my, oh,
know.
this. We have buildings in a hillside.
Yes, this is Shimla, so this is back towards the beginning of the trip. Before we,
Apparently there's no order to the sequence in which we put the photographs
they
here.
might have been randomized, but yeah, this was really one of the prettier towns. I've heard that this is like a honeymoon spot. Anyway, I really liked all of the multicolored buildings, but yeah, it's a really deep valley, and those buildings are just stacked one on top of each other.
And India is very colorful. Like, just, I would imagine anyway. Like, but with the dress, like in that town that we were just looking at, or saris, is that what they are? And the colorful buildings. So, I mean, I imagine in the rural, remote areas was less colorful,
It was, yeah.
but the town is colorful. Okay, what
and
else?
population dense.
Oh, yes, I can only imagine. What do we have here?
These are called stupas, so they're temple, like a small shrine, or these are actually pretty large. They're set up so that people can, stop and worship if they want to. So this is out in the middle of nowhere. We've been driving on the Kunzum Pass, and so it's just over the Himalayas. You
Just like in the middle of.
just middle of nowhere. People
Who
can
built
stop.
these?
I have no idea.
We
Do
have
you know?
no idea where
I
they
don't
came
know.
from. So they just like popped up out of the
Probably
landscape all of a
villagers
sudden.
and people offering homage to
So
churches.
they're just a remote worship site, sort of.
Right.
Well, these are also at the top of some of the higher peaks in the area. So if you put your prayers out from the highest peak, you're pretty close to Buddha, you're pretty close to, your source of, and you're also sending well wishes to the people below, you're sending out wishes for wellness and health and goodness to the people around you.
I love
and
that.
stuff.
That's beautiful.
So that was also presented.
Oh, okay. This is a monastery, I'm guessing.
Yes, so we're inside one of the temples. We're actually watching a sort of
Debate?
ceremony going on. Yeah, it was a debate. It was one of the young men sitting down there on the ground is sort of being examined. It's almost like he studied the text, and now they're debating about it. He has to prove his knowledge, and there was a whole ceremony about it of yelling and clapping and things that we got to
How fabulous.
observe. So it was really interesting.
And were all of you like associated with this particular trip, like in the monastery at the time, watching this like?
If you wanted to.
Just about everybody, yeah. We had the option, so we're all lined up on the back wall, just being quiet
We're right,
and
as sort of being
observing.
as unobtrusive as possible.
Right.
And the monks were not sort of thrown off by the fact that you were there?
No, they welcome that. There are mats to sit down and just watch, as long as you're respectful.
You did yoga, you said, on the roof of a monastery at some point.
Yes, we had yoga every day. There was a yoga instructor that went with us, and so we stayed in the guest
I was
house.
an American yoga instructor.
Yes, it was. And there's the picture right
There
there,
we
actually.
go.
So we're on top of the guest house next to that temple that we just saw. And
Is your reverse warrior? Very nice.
so we're just, it was a good way to start the morning.
Fabulous. So I think it's funny that you took a yoga instructor to India. I find that amusing.
I think it reflects the dimensional approach that we took to the whole trip.
Certainly.
The incidence of carrying our food and water with us was a lot of the remote villages we were going to didn't have restaurants, didn't have hotels, and the guest houses may not provide food service for us. But the other piece of it was it kept us all incredibly well. And I think after the multiple years of them providing these services, the biggest advantage to the trip was making sure that the water was boiled every morning, distributed, and that they kept us all in good working order.
That is fantastic. So lots of collaboration. Whoa. We have photographs are flying by. We have a pea field. That was a pea field.
Pea field?
Yeah.
And so you all were talking to me a bit before we started shooting that in the last couple generations, I found this ironic when you were talking about the sort of centralization and localization of the distribution of herbs, so that herbalists in that area could have access to the herbs that they were familiar with and distribute them to the clients, patients that they were serving. Right. But agriculturally speaking, now we have India growing peas or whatever agricultural crops and shipping them out for commerce. So there's this very strange sort of just juxtaposition between localizing our herbal distribution, our medical distribution, and then everything else. But your food is so much focused on your wellness, or is what you all were just talking about, making sure we have access to food and whatnot. And so, you were saying that they don't rotate their crops, and so is this having an adverse impact on the general health of these folks?
You know, that at this particular point in time, there's no landfill. There's no place to put things. So what was being dumped over the side down to the river gorges and into the sides of the mountain before might have been foodstuffs.
Right.
And
just
composting stuff. Now it's littered. There's no more plastic in India, so it's only glass. So all of the drinks and stuff
Like there's no plastic in India?
Plastic bottles and stuff. So, but there's no distribution center to recycle the glass. So there's walls and walls and walls of glass bottles around. And at a point, they end up over the side of the mountain, as does the plastic wrappers that contained the Twinkies or the chip box. And so you can start to see the influence now of more of the fast food environments and stuff.
And
processed foods, exactly. So it's convenient. People have money, they can buy things. There's quick and grab and go kind of things. And so it was that type of environment where there's a transition going on. And there's a lot of effect that hasn't been discerned yet. You know, I don't think
it will manifest itself.
But the conversations that we had, the discussions that we had, were done around a campfire, usually sort of almost like a debriefing in the evenings. Might be focused.
Is this where you were staying?
We only camped one night. This was at Chatru.
You're good with the names. You remembered all of them.
Goodness.
That's amazing.
I don't want to forget, but I made sure to write them down so I'd know years from now. So this is the only night we got to camp. The original plan was to camp a lot more, but there was flooding that changed our itinerary once we got there.
Oh.
So, and you were talking about it being really, really hot because it's India, and this was really, really cold because of our altitude.
Elevation.
Yep, I needed my thermal layer, I needed my winter coat, I had my, in July, so in New Delhi, it was over 100 degrees and super humid. But here, we were all as bundled up as we could get.
And the logistics of packing that, right? I mean, already you were talking about having to pack donated sunglasses for folks so that they don't get what are the words?
Pingueculum?
Pingueculum.
Or pterygium.
Or pterygium. Which is a PT word. It starts with a P.
Oh, so it doesn't even spell the way it
No,
sounds.
no.
You guys just make things up, I'm pretty sure. So not only do you have to figure out how to pack to bring those donated items, but then you also had to pack basically 2 wardrobes.
Right.
And camping gear.
And camping gear and all your food. And
no,
you didn't pack any food, but there was the kitchen services and whatever. Where did all that produce come from? I mean, clearly you didn't ship it across the ocean as you were flying, but so it came from town, so in New Delhi, I guess, and then you just trucked it all.
And the villages, and they would carry things and purchase things periodically.
Man, this is you guys being brilliant.
Yes, this
Is this a clinical situation?
Yes, this is me and another ETSU student, Michael Stallard, working at the pharmacy station. So you can see the 2 bags on the floor. That was the majority of the medication we had with us. So all that traveled too. We had that and another dental bag full of toothbrushes and toothpaste for children.
How many people did you service while you were there?
600.
600. And how many villages or towns? Or
We held 6 clinics.
6 individual
And 2 of them
clinics.
were in the same place, so 5 villages.
600 people. That is amazing. Were they grateful for your presence there?
Yes.
Very grateful.
That's nice. What do we have here?
This is actually my sister, Victoria.
I was going to say, that's not you. I can see the difference
Right.
between
My
you.
sister went on the trip with me. She headed up our vision station because she's an optometric assistant and wants to be an optometrist. So they let her be in charge. She's doing the eye test, you know, what's the smallest letter you can see. So we actually learned how to count to 9 in Hindi so that we could do the test with them without a translator. But we did have wonderful translators there, you know, when they couldn't. Sometimes they couldn't read Hindi. They knew a local language. So the healthcare provider would need 1 translator that spoke Hindi and a second translator that spoke the local language.
So it's translating Hindi to the local dialect.
Right. Then the second translator would talk to the patient, and then he would have to get all the way back.
This, can I just say, the commitment to this, the commitment you would demonstrate to providing care to these people with like the enormous like packing and the logistics and the expense and the translators or whatever else, enormous contribution you're making there. And I'm so glad that they were grateful for it. There you are, smiling, representing ETSU.
The entire ETSU group, minus 1 student. But we're at Khyber right there, which is one of the highest places in the world where people can live year round. So there was it.
Highest inhabited, is that 15?
Yeah, 15,000 something.
15,000, 7,000.
There's no oxygen. There's just no oxygen there. So so this isn't, like you said, the Himalayan Health Exchange has gone on for like 20 or so years now, and ETSU's involvement has been over time, right? We've been participating in this program, and we have intention to continue to participate. So is there a way for students on this campus who are interested in going to the medical professions or anthropology or whatever the case may be to be able to participate in future health exchanges?
We have, if folks wanted to contact either of us, we can link them to the folks, but it'd be through the anthropology department.
Right, sociology, anthropology, and so Melissa Schrift
Melissa,
over there.
and there's actually a person taking over for Melissa for the next set of trips.
Okay.
And I am totally blanking his name right now.
I don't know who's
And
leading
We'll figure it out, but if they contact either of the two of you,
We can help them out.
facilitate
Or
the
even
contact.
Melissa Schrift in the Department of Anthropology.
Would you ever go back and do this again?
I would. I need to get this one paid for.
Right.
And there's an awful lot of need in our own country.
Indeed.
There's a lot of need in my own community.
Yes.
So I think that I tend to need to do these trips every couple of years to remind me of the global responsibility that we have.
And as you know, globalization and cultures mix and mingle and whatever else, your practices, even in the United States, are going to become increasingly multicultural.
Right.
And having to be able to sort of be responsive to not just the specific health concerns of people of different regions, but how their culture and their religion and whatever else influences the way that they respond to your medical advice, I imagine is important to learn.
I think too, as a professor, when I add cultural awareness and cultural sensitivity to my lecture, and I can tell a story about my going to something like this, it lends some credibility to what I'm doing.
Indeed, I would imagine. I think that this is an enormously fabulous exercise. I am a little bit envious. It doesn't occur to me usually to travel to, I like running water, and I don't even go camping like in the United States. So, you know, electricity and camping are really important, but you all embarked on this enormous adventure and brought your skills and talents and assistance to people who desperately needed it. And I think that is admirable and wonderful, and I want to commend you on your commitment to doing so. I appreciate so much that you've been here. Thank you so much for joining us on Spotlight ETSU. Today we've had Dr. Helene Holbrook from the College of Nursing and Rebecca Howard, a microbiology student, talking to us about their trips to India. Join us next time on Spotlight. And then you just see your chat, but I in the corner there so it looks awkward and stuff.